Clark's Unexplained. 347 strange sightings, incredible occurrences, and puzzling physical phenomena. I'm John Horrigan. Tonight's episode, Unidentified Submarine Objects, U.S.Os. While sailing in the equatorial Atlantic Ocean in the early morning hours of October 28, 1902, the Fort Salisbury came upon an incredible sight, as Second Officer A.H. Raymer noted in the ship's log. Dark object with long, luminous trailing wake, thrown in relief by a phosphorescent sea, seen ahead a little on starboard bow. Lookout reported 2 masthead lights ahead. These 2 lights, almost as bright as a steamer's lights, appeared to shine from 2 points in line on the upper surface of the dark mass. Concluded dark mass was a whale and lights phosphorescent. On drawing nearer, dark mass and lights sank below the surface, prepared to examine the wake in passing with binoculars. Passed about 40 to 50 yards on port side of wake, and discovered it was the scaled back of some huge monster slowly disappearing below the surface. Darkness of the night prevented determining its exact nature, but scales of apparently 1 foot diameter and dotted in places with barnacle growth were plainly discernible. The breadth of the body showing above water tapered from about 30 feet close abaft, where the dark mass had appeared to be about 5 foot at the extreme end visible. Length roughly about 500 to 600 feet. Concluded that the dark mass first seen must have been the creature's head. The swirl caused by the monster's progress could be distinctly heard, and a strong odor like that of a low-tide beach on a summer day pervaded the air. Twice along its length, the disturbance of the water and a broadening of the surrounding belt of phosphorus indicated the presence of huge fins in motion below the surface. The wet, shiny back of the monster was dotted with twinkling phosphorescent lights, and was encircled with a band of white phosphorescent sea. Such are the bare facts of the passing of the sea serpent, in latitude 5 degrees 31 minutes south, longitude 4 degrees 42 minutes west, as seen by myself being officer of the watch, and by the helmsman and lookout man. The account's laconic tone notwithstanding, this incredible but supposedly true story challenges the reader's boggle threshold. To Bernard Heuvelmans, the father of cryptozoology and the greatest living authority on sea serpents, it can only be all nonsense. As Charles Fort wryly observed, so doubly damned is this datum that the attempt to explain it was in terms of the accursed sea serpent. If we are to believe this story, of course, we have no choice but to assume that the object was a machine masquerading as a sea serpent. If that notion sounds familiar, it is probably because you have read Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. First published in 1870, is still in print, and one of the most popular science fiction novels of all time. It concerns the marvelous invention of Captain Nemo, who designed his submarine Nautilus so that those who saw it would think it was a sea serpent. But are we to believe the story? It was reported as true in the London Daily Mail, November 19, 1902, and when interviewed, the ship's captain, not himself a witness, remarked of his second officer, "I can only say that he is very earnest on the subject and has, together with the lookout and the helmsman, seen something in the water of a huge nature as specified." An even more fantastic story, if that is possible, was published in a Washington newspaper, the Tacoma Daily Ledger, on July 3, 1893. The witnesses, most of them named, were identified as members of a fishing party which left Tacoma on the afternoon of the 1st and camped that evening on Henderson Island, not far from a large band of surveyors. The narrative that follows is attributed to one of the fishermen. "It was, I guess, about midnight before I fell asleep, but exactly how long I slept I cannot say, for when I woke it was with such startling suddenness that it never entered my mind to look at my watch, and when after a while I did look at my watch, as well as every watch belonging to the party, it was stopped. I'm afraid that you will fail to comprehend how suddenly that camp was awake. Since the creation of the world, I doubt if sounds and sights more horrible were ever seen or heard by mortal man. I was in the midst of a pleasant dream when, in an instant, a most horrible noise rang out in the clear morning air, and instantly the whole air was filled with a strong current of electricity that caused every nerve in the body to sting with pain, and a light as bright as that created by the concentration of many arc lights kept constantly flashing. At first I thought it was a thunderstorm, but as no rain accompanied it, and as both light and sound came off from the bay, I turned my head in that direction, and if it is possible for fright to turn one's hair white, then mine ought to be snow white, for right before my eyes was a most horrible-looking monster." By this time, every man in our camp, as well as the men from the camp of the surveyors, was gathered on the bank of the stream. And as soon as we could gather our wits together, we began to question if what we were looking at was not the creation of the mind. But we were soon disburdened of this idea, for the monster slowly drew in towards the shore, and as it approached, from its head poured out a stream of water that looked like blue fire. All the while, the air seemed to be filled with electricity, and the sensation experienced was as if each man had a suit of clothes formed of the fine points of needles. One of the men from the surveyor's camp incautiously took a few steps in the direction of the water, which reached the man. He instantly fell to the ground and lay there as though he was dead. Mr. W.L. MacDonald attempted to reach the man's body to pull it back into a place of safety, but he was struck with some of the water that the monster was throwing and fell senseless to the earth. By this time, every man in both parties was panic-stricken, and we rushed to the woods for a place of safety, leaving the fallen men lying there on the beach. As we reached the woods, the demon of the deep sent out flashes of light that illuminated the surrounding country for miles, and his roar, which sounded like the roar of thunder, became terrific. When we reached the woods, we looked around and saw the monster making off in the direction of the sound, and in an instant it disappeared off in the direction of the sound, and in an instant it disappeared beneath the waters of the bay, but for some time we were able to trace its course by a bright luminous light that was on the surface of the water. As the fish disappeared, a total darkness surrounded us, and it took us some time to find our way back to the beach where our comrades lay. We were unable to tell the time, as the powerful electric force had stopped our watches. We eventually found MacDonald and the other man, and we were greatly relieved to find that they were still alive, though unconscious. So we sat down to wait the coming of daylight. It came, I should judge, in about half an hour, and by this time, by constant work on the two men, both were able to stand up. This monster fish, or whatever you may call it, was fully 150 feet long, and at its thickest part I should judge about 30 feet in circumference. Its shape was somewhat out of the ordinary insofar that the body was neither round nor flat but oval, and from what we could see the upper part of the body it was covered with a very coarse hair. The head was shaped very much like the head of a walrus, though of course very much larger. Its eyes, of which it apparently had 6, were as large as around as a dinner plate, and were exceedingly dull, and it was about the only spot on the monster that at one time or another was not illuminated. At intervals of about every 8 feet from its head to its tail, a substance that had the appearance of a copper band encircled its body, and it was from these many bands that the powerful electric current appeared to come. The bands nearest the head seemed to have the strongest electric force, and it was from these first 6 bands that the most brilliant lights were emitted. Near the center of its head were 2 large horn-like substances, though they could not have been horns, for it was through them that the electrically charged water was thrown out. Its tail, from what I could see of it, was shaped like a propeller and seemed to revolve, and it may be possible that the strange monster pushes himself through the water by means of this propeller-like tail. At will, the strange monstrosity seemed to be able to emit strong waves of electric current, giving off electromotive forces which caused any person coming within the radius of this force to receive an electrical shock. Amusingly, like Raymer, the narrator of the above tale, a tall one by any standard, insists on characterizing the monstrosity as a sea serpent rather than an extraordinary technological device. Though we probably will never know for sure, one suspects that this is just one of the many outrageous and less than strictly factual yarns with which 19th century American newspapers regaled their readers. Other USOs. If reports like the 2 above compel wonder more than belief, they do not necessarily relegate reports of unidentified submarine objects, or USOs, to the realm of popular fantasy. Even in the 19th century, some surprisingly credible reports of such phenomena were recorded. One of the more impressive occurred on June 18, 1845, in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. The crew of the brig Victoria saw 3 bright, luminous objects emerge from the sea and shoot into the sky, where they were visible for about 10 minutes. Professor Baden-Powell collected reports from these and other witnesses and published their testimony in an 1861 issue of Report of the British Association. One man who observed the sight independently from land said the objects were 5 times the size of the moon, with sail-like or streamer-like appendages. He and other witnesses who had the objects in view for between 20 minutes and an hour said they appeared to be joined together. On November 12, 1887, near Cape Race, a large ball of fire, one account describes it as enormous, rose from the sea, ascended 50 feet, then approached a nearby ship, the British steamer Siberian, moving against the wind as it did so. It then retreated and flew away. The incident was reported and discussed in Nature, l'Astronomie and Meteorological Journal. Modern UFO literature records a number of supposed U.S.O. incidents, but many seem explainable as sightings of terrestrial submarines in unexpected places. During the 1960s and 1970s, for example, Scandinavia was plagued with submarines in its territorial waters, and some writers have claimed these were extraordinary unknowns. They were, however, Soviet craft on spy missions. Here is a sampling of the more puzzling reports. Off the Alaska coast, summer 1945. Around sunset, a large round object, something like 200 feet in diameter, emerged from the sea about a mile from the U.S. Army transport Delaroff. After ascending a short distance, it turned toward the ship, approached it, and circled it silently 2 or 3 times before it flew off and disappeared in the southwest. North Atlantic, late summer 1954. The crew of the Groot Beer, a ship owned by the Dutch government, observed a flat, moon-shaped object rise out of the ocean. Watching it through binoculars, Captain Jan P. Boshoff noted its gray color and bright lights around the edges. It flew off at a 60-degree angle, covering 32 minutes of arc in 1.5 minutes' time. It, or another unknown object, was also seen by the Honduran freighter Aliki P, sailing in the same general area. It radioed the Long Island Coast Guard, observed a ball of fire moving in and out of the water without being extinguished, trailing white smoke. It moved in an erratic course, and it finally disappeared. Westchester County, New York, September 17, 1955. Around 1:30 a.m., a couple named Boards, fishing enthusiasts, were rowing out onto a lake on Titicus Reservoir when they saw an object come out of the water a few feet from their boat and toward the shore. Rose-colored and luminous, it was the size and shape of a basketball. After rising a foot into the air, it fell back into the water with a loud splash and disappeared. Unnerved, the Bordises headed for shore. On their way, they saw, 200 yards to the southeast and at the center of the lake, 2 parallel lights, wavy in shape but rigid, 30 feet in length, along or just under the surface. Above these serpents was a round light of lesser brilliance, more yellowish-white in hue, an investigator reported. Considerably smaller than a full moon and dimmer than a car headlight, it appeared to be the size of a basketball. At a distance of a few hundred feet, it was not hovering in midair, but was apparently fixed to a solid body, which was only intermittently visible as a dim gray shape against the blackness. It appeared to be a rotating spotlight. The couple watched the object for a time and even tried to approach it. When they left, considerably shaken, of course, it was still there. The couple emphatically rejected any suggestion that they had seen just another boat. Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, October 4th, 1967. Just before midnight, 2 men driving in a car saw a row of bright reddish-orange lights. They came off and on one at a time, according to the Yarmouth, Nova Scotia Light Herald of October 12th of that year. The lights were at an angle of 45 degrees, dipping to the right, and the lights came on in order from bottom to top. 5 other persons in a car stopped and watched the lights fly off to the water half a mile from shore, where they changed into a single bright white light which bobbed onto the waves. Numerous other people, including a Royal Canadian Mounted Police constable, also saw it, and a number of boats set out to find it. Within an hour, the paper related, the boats had arrived in the area where the object had disappeared and reported finding a very large patch of bubbling water and foam. One fisherman described the froth as 80 feet wide and yellowish in color and said that he had never seen anything like it before in the area. Underwater civilization? Taking reports such as these and combining it with Bermuda Triangle lore, Ivan T. Sanderson wrote a book called Invisible Residents, 1970, which treated these as evidence that underwater OINTs, which are other intelligences or OINTs, evolved on the Earth and developed a sophisticated technological civilization. If a superior technological type of intelligent civilizations developed on this planet underwater, he wrote, They would very likely have gotten much farther ahead than we have, having had several millions and possibly up to 1 billion years head start on us, life as we know it having started in the sea. Such sweeping speculations are unsustained by any real evidence, and no significant writers on anomalous phenomena have shown any interest in endorsing them. There are, however, occasional suggestions either that extraterrestrial UFOs maintain bases in oceans and lakes, or that such craft are exploring the watery regions along the Earth's land areas. Here is another account of the sighting of the Fort Salisbury. And this comes from Charles Berlitz's World of the Odd and the Awesome. It's called Mystery at Sea. It was a clear, quiet night on October 28, 1902, as the steamship Fort Salisbury moved through the Gulf of Guinea off the west coast of Africa, heading for the equator. Knowing he had a well-built ship and a trustworthy crew, the ship's captain went to bed and drifted off into a peaceful sleep. The night seemed to be totally ordinary and uneventful. But suddenly, at 5 minutes past 3, the lookout shouted a frantic alarm. Dead ahead of the Fort Salisbury, where nothing was supposed to be, was a huge round object. A.H. Raymer, the second officer, rushed on deck and ordered the searchlight to be turned on the thing in their path. It revealed a metallic structure with 2 small orange-red lights at one end and 2 blue-green lights near the other. The crew described it as similar to a tremendous airship made out of metal plates. From inside the thing came noises that sounded like machinery working, as well as unintelligible, excited babbling. As the captain and his men watched the strange object slowly sink beneath the waves, they shouted offers of help. But there was no answer as the giant metal disc slipped out of their sight forever. And finally, this ditty comes from Charles Berlitz's World of Strange Phenomena. It's entitled Sea Serpent Sunk. May 1917 found the Hillary, a 6,000-ton armed merchantman, traversing calm waters near Iceland when the lookout spotted something large on the surface. Fearing a sneak attack by a German submarine, Captain F.W. Dean alerted his gun crews and sailed straight for the target. But Dean and crew encountered no enemy U-boat. What they found instead was a marine mystery. From a distance of 30 yards, the captain stared in wonder as a head about the shape but somewhat larger than that of a cow broke surface. No visible protrusions such as horns or ears were evident. The head itself was described as black, except for the front of the face, which could clearly be seen to have a strip of whitish flesh, very like a cow, has between its nostrils. A 4-foot-high, thin and flabby dorsal fin was also visible. The entire creature was estimated to be some 60 feet long, 20 feet of which consisted of a sinewy neck. Then, in one of the more unfortunate bungles of maritime and zoological history, Dean decided his gun crews could use practice. Withdrawing to a distance of 1,200 yards, he ordered them to open fire. A direct hit struck the creature. Its death throes roiling the water, the living submarine sank from view. 2 days later, on May 25th, 1917, the Hillary itself sailed into the sights of a real U-boat. Still, she fared better than the sea serpent she had sunk. Most of her crew survived to fight again.
The Crescent Moon Club, in association with ABT, presents Omnibus Unlimited, a roundtable discussion of provocative subjects which must be addressed today. A new philosophy for the third millennium. Hello again, everyone. I'm Laurence, Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited. Tonight, from our ABT studios in Dedham, our topic for discussion is U.S.Os, Unidentified Submarine Objects. With me to discuss this topic is seeker and reader John Horrigan. John, thanks for being here this evening.
Thanks, Larry.
John, that was a terrific story you just read, and one has to, or stories that you read, and one has to consider that if indeed on an interstellar level it's hard to believe that humans are the only life forms in the universe. I think that most people would agree that that is very unlikely, given the fact that there is so much universe and so little Earth in comparison. one is now compelled to think about that in terms of this planet, and your story brought that quite forcefully to the forefront. When one thinks about the fact that only 1/3 of the planet's surface is actually bare Earth, and the other 2/3 is covered Earth with water of varying depths. And of the 1/3, which is Earth, only 1/3 to perhaps a half is habitable by human beings. I mean, I suppose we could build some sort of structure and live in Antarctica, but who would want to? It'd be real tough to go to the 7-Eleven at 3 in the morning for cigarettes. But at any rate, if life exists on the bare Earth here that we live on here in Dedham at our ABT studios, then why is it not possible for others to exist under the water? It seems, listening to your dissertation there, your reading, made me realize that, wow, it's quite likely that there are others living on this planet, coexisting, not aliens in the true sense of aliens from extraterrestrials from other worlds, but other Earthlings who are completely different than us, since we live on the land and they would live under the water. But there are too many sightings to say that this does not exist. I know that you would agree with that, but what could we say to a person who just doesn't believe it? I suppose we could go back to an earlier conversations that we had before, that, I've never seen Seattle, Washington, so to me it does not exist. People tell me it exists. I see it on a map. I take it on faith that it is there. But I have not really ever seen it, yet I believe in it. Is it so hard to believe in other Earthlings who live under the water?
My favorite cartoon character was Aquaman, and how he could hold his breath forever. You see that there are divers in the Caribbean that can hold their breath for an extended period to go after the tourists' coins for extraordinary amounts of times. The Navy SEALs are trained to hold their breath underwater, but their mammalry gets the best of them. They're mammals. They're not amphibians. Now, if you want to believe in that wives' tale, that we were some sort of amphibian that crawled out of some primordial tar pit, that to me is archaic thinking. You're back in the medieval times. And if you think that way, then you should not be accustomed or be allowed to use electricity or something from the 20th century. That's my new philosophy. If you think 13th century or 10th century or Dark Ages philosophy, well, then you shouldn't have the fruits of our society. I think that we should wake up. I don't necessarily think that there are people living under the water that have been here all along, but I think they're alien craft that have been living under our water and have been here all along. So yes, like you said, it could be considered a species of animal here on Earth. Now, I mixed that in. I wanted to show you little sea serpent stories. Could have been a big whale. We mentioned Captain Nemo, about him having a craft shaped like a sea serpent, so people would think it's a serpent. And whether you want to believe in the Loch Ness Monster or Champ or the sea serpents, my question, pray tell, why? Why do these stories still persist in our culture that have lasted centuries, thousands of years, hundreds of years, 10 or 20 years in some cases? Why? I am a wholehearted believer in wives' tales and stereotypes. Why would they persist sociologically in a culture unless there was some validity to it? Back to the theory about, I don't believe in Europe, Lar. I've never been there. There's no such thing. If I were to draw you my map, it would look like, make Columbus's Piri Reis map look accurate. Like you said, Seattle, Washington. There's no such thing as Houston, Texas. Texas ends just below Dallas, where I've been. But I believe People have told me there's a Houston, Texas, so I tend to think that there is. If we have that type of mentality, I believe in God. You believe in an external force that's benevolent and omniscient and omnipotent that we've deemed as Ted, not exactly God, but the same type of overpowering, leading force in our lives. We have this inherent, I know I'm straying here, but we have this inherent notion to do good, to be good people. And we just want to be nice. And I think that shows that the deity, we're in the deity's shadows, so to speak. We are a reflection of him, a mirror image, but we're mortal. But my question here is, and when I originally thought about this, why are they underwater? Why are these alien vessels underwater? Well, that would tell me, number one, they're investigating how our oceans, the salinity, the life forms, obviously, in there. But they're nice little hiding places, aren't they, huh? No one's going to bother me when I conduct my little experiments. Number two is, I thought about when I was a little kid playing in the ocean with my brothers and sisters, or in a pool, I'd get the tire tube or that styrofoam surfboard and pull it underwater and release it underneath their chin. You know, one time I cut my sister Janet's chin, and I got what my old man called red bottom after that. But I noticed how high the projectiles would go, or even a plastic ball. If you held it underwater and released it, it would go jettisoning up into the sky. So are these extraterrestrial craft jettisoning themselves, or using the ocean as some sort of catapult to transfer them through our atmosphere?
Well, very interesting, John. I think that to use the ocean as a catapult, you would need to first get down there, which would require, theoretically, an equal amount of energy to get down to the point. But let's keep in mind, whether you, the viewer, believe that aliens exist or they do not exist, or there are other human species that live underwater or not. One thing you must agree with, and I know John and I agree with this, that the ocean is a terrific hiding spot, a perfect place to hide. No one is going to hide anything in downtown Manhattan, if Manhattan exists at all.
Because you've never been there. Because you haven't been there, right?
But it's not only a terrific hiding place, but guess what else? It's really dark. So even if you go down into the water deep enough, you can't see anything, even with the brightest lights. And then, of course, it has that terrific little side benefit of catapulting you back into the ocean, back into the atmosphere very quickly. But we're coming to the end here, but a very, very interesting topic, John, one that certainly has been food for thought for me. But that, I think, will have to end our discussion of U.S.Os, Unidentified Submarine Objects. A terrific story, and I'd like to thank reader and seeker John Horrigan. John, thanks for this subject. Any final words?
Yeah, we're going to bring this one back. I have some other accounts. I just selected those, and we haven't even touched on sea serpents. And that brings in another question. Are these alien crabs just disguising themselves as some sort of sea serpent?
Indeed. And hopefully we'll have our ufologist Dan Murray along. I'm sure that he would love to jump into this. But anyway, that will do it for our topic tonight. Unidentified Submarine Objects, U.S.Os. No, not the bands that were playing in the Second World War. I'd like to thank John Horrigan for being here. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Larry. Again, you're just doing a kick-A job hosting this program.
You're very kind to say so. For our viewers out there, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or if you'd like to be a guest on Omnibus Unlimited, the address to write to is Omnibus Unlimited, Box 577, Dover, Massachusetts, 02030-0577. And all letters on Omnibus Unlimited will be reviewed and discussed on Omnibus Unlimited in future programs. For all of us here at Omnibus Unlimited, I'm Laurence, Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited. Thank you for your attention. Good night and good luck. Omnibus Unlimited is a presentation of ABT and the Crescent Moon Club. This program is authorized and presented by ABT. Any broadcast, rebroadcast, or other use of the accounts and descriptions of this copyrighted telecast without the expressed written consent of ABT is strictly encouraged. Copyright 1993 by ABT.